Today we are here to talk about the additional requirement of onshore lodgement. I've done a session today with ABC Chinese. They were trying to understand whether this is discrimination against people who don't speak English. Of course it is. It is a very bad thing to do by the Liberal government. So they will introduce functional English, okay, claiming that is to better for the immigration's cohesion, cultural cohesion, or blending to the mainstream society. They said they're gonna do this in late 2021. We don't know when yet. All right. And then they said functional English to be introduced for applicants. I'll explain what functional English a bit later. But this may also apply to sponsors who are not Australian citizens. If you're PR, you're sponsoring your partner, you may be required to provide functional English as well. Or at least that's what Alan Tudge claimed to be. This is shocking. I was shocked by this requirement that the sponsor must satisfy English requirement. Many of you probably can. If you're listening to the seminar, you wouldn't have a problem, but you might, just be careful. We don't know whether they will allow payment, pay the VAT, second VAT to waive English, functional English. I think they should, but we don't know that yet. Look, this is really important. Another thing is that they will introduce a two-step application for the partner visa. That means that you have to get sponsorship approved first before making a valid application for a 20 visa. That had been on the table for more than 2 years, I think. The bill had been passed a long time ago, more than 1 year ago. I can't remember. I think 1.5 years ago, the bill had passed the parliament, but the department hadn't actually enforced it because there are so many problems within it. How long will the processing time take for sponsorships? If the sponsorship take really long and the visa holder visa got expired, who's going to be responsible? All of the practical things. But Alan Tudge emphasized that again. I think he's intending to enforce that, but we don't know when, how. The legislative work is quite significant. So let's watch it out. Remember, all of that claim made by Alan Tudge had not become law yet. And if you remember correctly, a few years ago down the track, the Liberal Department had tried to increase the salary requirement of a SURA for the contributing parent visa, increased to more than $83,000. That was disallowed by the parliament. And they wanted to introduce competent English requirement for citizenship. That was again disallowed by the parliament. I think it was just basically rejected. I doubt whether this one will pass. The Labour government has already expressed clear objection on this proposal, so it might not pass. We'll watch it. Let's watch it.
Yeah, thank you. And just to touch base on the functional English, so I'm just reading out the requirements from the currently active legislative instruments regarding what is the definition of functional English and how would you satisfy it. There are several ways. I'll just talk about the more popular one. So if you satisfy either of the following condition, then you would deem to have satisfied functional English, and obviously for the purpose of the partner visa as well. So the first one is you have an IELTS average band score of 4.5. It doesn't have to be 4.5 for all bands, just the average score 4.5. And then you will have the equivalent of IELTS in TOEFL, which is not very popular, so I won't mention. PTE of a score of 30, a Cambridge English Advanced score of 147, and not more than 12 months before you launch the visa or when the case officer requests your English evidence. So remember, the English score for the purpose of functional English might not be valid for 2 or 3 years like other visa types. So just be aware of that. So that's the first one. The second one is complete all of your primary educations and at least 3 years of secondary educations and at a school where all the instruction was conducted in English. The third way to satisfy functional English is if you have completed 5 years of secondary educations in the school or institution where the instruction was conducted in English. The fourth way of providing evidence is if you have successfully completed in Australia at least 1 year of full-time study or part-time study equivalent to a degree, a diploma, at institution where the instruction was in English, or you have a passport from the UK, USA, Canada, New Zealand, or Republic of Ireland. So if you have any one of out of any of the conditions that I mentioned, you would have deemed satisfied functional English.
Okay, thank you, To. Thank you very much. To summarize it, the change: one, partner visa will be processed quicker this year because of the additional 30,000 places. Secondly, if you already lodged the visa application, you will not be impacted by the functional English requirement whatsoever. The functional English requirement will kick in late 2021 if it ever kicks in. So if you already applied, don't worry. But if you will apply, then you have to check that whether you would satisfy those requirements. And of course, if you can understand this seminar, I don't think IELTS 4.5 will be a problem. And if you studied in Australia for over a year on a degree, then you don't have a problem. Even if you fail all your subjects, it is still satisfy the functional English requirement. Otherwise, I think the key thing is that they also said that if you couldn't pass English, functional English, you can participate in the 500 hours AMEP program, the English training program instead. I don't think they will test you. As long as you attended all the sessions, they will let you pass it. I think that what happens is that we can see the trend. Australia is becoming less, or Australian government's policy is becoming a bit less multicultural. It's become more towards the right-wing style, which is liberals. I'm not political. I'm just saying, look, the Liberal government obviously is more right-wing. That's their intention, and they wanted to bring a more Australian, more white, more traditional sort of values. We don't know, but again, there's a Labor who are the left-wing power in the government, and they will try to fight it. So this policy, whether it's going to fly, we have to watch. Yeah.